call Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou katoa. The Green Party is opposing this bill, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to explain why at the second reading. I would like to acknowledge the committee and the committee's chair and all the work that the committee does, but I can't say that I found this particular bill edifying or coherent, although it does have some value, but we will not be able to support it. This bill, Education Bill number 2, is so broad and diverse that the net effect is a strange mixture of the perfectly reasonable and the completely unreasonable. And we have waded through this bill with the assistance of the small number of submitters who actually knew what it was about, and the result is as disparate and mediocre as when we started. So I'll begin with talking about what's reasonable in the bill. It is reasonable in Part 1 to provide a legislative framework for the secondary tertiary programs. These programs are not new. They're not new. There have been this type of programs, but there's probably no harm in updating and clarifying them in terms of some of the issues raised. Whether it's necessary or not, it's not essentially harmful. And I have no problem with issues such as recognising lead providers, and also for obscure issues that are important or not actually obscure, like pastoral care for students of school age, because we must remember in doing this that it's school age students, and we support clarification of the lead provider role. The school tertiary program clauses support an existing provision of more options for young people who have an active interest in learning trades whilst at school age, and this is a positive and practical development, so we do not have a problem with it. However, there are 4 main other issues that we have tried to contest and which prevent us from supporting the more reasonable provisions. And firstly, I'd like to speak about limited attendance, which has been well covered, but there is more to say. And the clauses around childcare provision at gyms and shopping mall creches remove the early childhood centre requirements, but throws the baby out with the bathwater. Of course, creches and malls and gyms are not formal education establishments, but as the previous speaker from the Labour Party pointed out, young children are learning at all times instead of what they learn and from whom they learn it. We cannot stop them learning, and we need to protect them and create environments where that learning is going to support their well-being. And this bill removes all requirements to ensure police staff-to-child ratios, health and safety, particular to the care of children. It was at the committee that there would be health and safety provisions as standard in any gym or shopping mall. We're not talking about adults here, we're talking about the particular care of children. And the argument that the parents will be nearby, so there's no need for extra protection, does not ring true. Because meanwhile, at the other end of the gymnasium or the shopping mall, and some of them are vast, with loud music deafening the ear, an untrained person may be trying to care for your toddler, 2 6-year-olds who didn't like each other on site, and a crawling bottle-fed baby without facilities. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be a creche at these places, but the public would assume, parents would definitely assume, that there are standards for care and protection. It's a given in a so-called modern civilised society that your children will be protected by the state when they enter into any formal environment. At some level there will be that protection. That is a given that citizens and parents will assume. They will be astonished, any of them that know about this, to realise that the police vetting, bottom line, is not there. And the only argument that was raised on the issue by the government was that parents could choose to use these facilities and would make their own calls about safety. And the Green Party doesn't believe that parents will even know. It's not likely to be a sign outside the creche saying no police vetting here. It's not going to happen like that. The parents will not know about this law that removes standards, and we cannot agree with that. We believe that to remove the formal education requirement could happen in a sensible way without lowering the standards for safety and making them non-existent in terms of children and babies. And I do wonder how much imagination is needed to figure out what could happen if there are not enough staff or facilities or safety in terms of breastfeeding for small children. But then this is actually about the children, is it? No. This is about the ideological opposition to standards and regulation. And it's an inappropriate opportunity to cut those at the expense of families because the parents won't know, the staff won't be trained, and the children are the people we should be concerned about. So I really fail to understand how we've got to this place. It's very bizarre. The second issue is private school governance. The Law Commission review into private schools made a large number of recommendations, 5 of which this bill picks up. However, this bill is a missed opportunity. There are some gaps around the information to parents about suspension and expulsion in particular. The Law Commission recommended that there be transparency in terms of suspension and expulsion policy being available to students and parents in the interests of natural justice and the welfare of children. In Recommendation 28 and Recommendation 29, the Law Commission have made 2 clear recommendations on appealing suspension and making disciplinary procedures available to families upon request, and these were not included in the bill, so we cannot trumpet this bill as a celebration of interpreting the Law Commission's recommendations. It's not. It's actually missed out some of these vital things, and this was brought to our attention by a couple of people. It may not be a major issue. On its own, it might not have been enough for us to vote against the bill on this, but I can see what they're saying in the interest of natural justice. A more serious issue for the Green Party, a more profound issue, is the out-of-zone enrolment priorities. At a recent Victoria University seminar on inequality, in fact this week, a comment was made that, quote, social origins and inheritance matter more in less egalitarian societies. And this change to out-of-zone enrolment priorities to offer priority to students of former pupils and children of board members is simply reinforcing inequity. Now that might be a tenet of private schools, but it does not belong in the public system. And we wholeheartedly oppose this principle. Why would we want to increase privilege and inequity and create social origins and inheritance having more power than the ability to attend your local school unless we want a less egalitarian society? And if we do, let's come out and say it. Let's come out and say that we don't want egalitarian societies and we don't want public schools available to everybody. We want to create inherited privilege. That's fine. That's what the private school system does. But we will fight tooth and nail for the rights of children to go to local schools, and we're absolutely opposed to this. The amendments that came to the Select Committee late are a great concern to us, and not so much for the content. The amendments were regarding the Teachers' Council, and we don't have a problem with the annotation of the Teachers' Council registers in terms of teachers' histories, and neither did the unions. But I do have a problem with the process. It was the last days of consideration when these were brought forward. The teachers' unions and the STAR had less than 2 days to consider them and make submissions. It was acknowledged verbally in the committee as a bad process. And if issues in these amendments need to be tightened up, and if teacher suspension needs new law, then teachers themselves need to be consulted, and they need to take ownership of those changes. We've got enough conflict going on at the moment between the government and the sector without adding to it. We need good faith, and the teachers' unions showed a clear willingness to look at the issues raised. They did not have a problem with looking at the issues around suspension or even the suppression orders, but they did have a problem that they should be told they had 1 day to consider these issues. Because actually these groups are representative groups. They wanted to go back to their members and talk through these issues because it vitally affects those members. The issues around suspension and pay actually affect the daily lives of teachers, and maybe they need to be tightened up, and maybe there is room to improve the ability for hearings to be made more public and names to be made more public. But you don't give them 1 day to consider it. And as I've been talking to those unions, and as they said to me, we wanted to go back and talk to our members. That's what we do. We don't do draconian decision-making on behalf of others. We are not the elite that speaks on behalf of. We speak with our members. And so, given all of those issues combined, the Green Party was unable to support this bill. And we are also unable to get enthusiastic about when the sector and the government are in what I consider to be crisis. We're spending a lot of time talking about things like these small centres where children will not get protection. And we're spending a lot of time talking about how to privilege those people who have already had an inherited relationship with the school. And that's not actually what I thought we'd be doing when I joined the Select Committee. I thought we'd be at the heart of the debate, but we're not. And in fact, there are a number of very negative things happening in the bill, and we will not be supporting it for those reasons.
Okay.